What's up, my Wizards Dev? That's me, MTG, placed on area decks and stuff. We've also got holes in our schedule while we wait for Shadows Ever Innistrad to come out. And I've got a couple of deck techs I want to kick out, but I thought that this would be a good time, a little lull in the season, to do something I've been wanting to do for a while. This is my top 5 decks of all time. And this is a really, really subjective list. This is not one of those like, these are the most dominant decks that ever standarded ever. And it's like not at all. These are just the decks that I've sort of had the most fun playing with over a 20 some odd year, 20 plus year career at this point. And you know, it'll not only be like a trip down memory lane and a history lesson, a little insight on me and what I've done playing Magic, but you know, it'll be interesting for newer players and older players that remember these decks. So let's try it out. Let's give this a shot and see how you like it. Got an honorable mention. I always have an honorable mention. I like to cheat and put an extra entry on the list. That's what honorable mentions are. They're cheating. But I do them. Who cares? My honorable mention that I just really couldn't not talk about in this video of the best decks ever, or just the ones that I love the most, is The Deck. The Deck by Brian Weissman, a name that's probably not familiar to a lot of Magic players, but it's a really important name in the history of Magic because he's done a lot to shape what we know of as, you know, sort of the greater metagame, you know, not the individual metagames of Standard or Modern, but sort of how we think of deck building as a whole, you know, sort of the paper, rock, scissors of aggro, control, mid-range. He's got a lot to do with shaping that in the form of this deck. What exactly is the deck? It's a blue-white shell control deck that plays actually all 5 colors, but only plays like 1 card in each color that's not blue or white. You know, just your basic counter spells, removal in the form of Swords to Plowshares and Wrath of God, and big finisher creature in Sarah Angel. Basic stuff here, but the deck could do a lot of things, and later on it would add Fireball as an alternate win condition. It would add extra colors to play Regrow in green, or Regrowth in green, and Demonic Tutor in black. And really just had all the most powerful cards in it, basically. And this isn't a time when we can play the Power 9, so with a Black Lotus and, say, a Mox Pearl on turn 1, you could easily power out Sarah Angel turn 1 and just start winning from there. Don't even have to play like a control deck. So the deck had multiple paths to victory and was just a lockdown deck. You use cards like Moat, incredibly important card for the deck, locking down any creatures that don't fly from attacking you is really amazingly good, I would say. And was often just like the, you know, turning point for the deck. You play Moat, you start restabilizing. You know, you Swords to Plowshares the biggest guy, or the flying guy, you know, eventually you just play Sarah Angel, ride it to the win. This is sort of a form that a lot of control decks have taken over the years, you know. Counter and removal in the early game, drop a big threat. And we have this deck to thank for that, and the decks that are a response to it, like aggro, and then subsequently mid-range decks. So a lot of things, a lot of roads lead back to the deck. A deck that's like 20 years old. I think it started in like 1995, this deck came together. Before we move on, one more thing about this honorable mention. I'm talking about the honorable mention for a while, but really influential deck, so you have to do that. One more thing though. This was, you know, sort of the deck that in a roundabout way started net decking, you know, so I in a way owe my job to this deck, because this is sort of the first deck that got press and gaming magazines and on the sort of fledgling internet. But Magic has always had a presence on the internet. Not always, because the internet is actually really super old, but since the internet has been a part of pop culture, Magic's been on it. And in the sort of very early days of internet Magic and discussion on the internet, the deck really went around in a lot of circles, and you know, got a lot of print press and things like the Duelist and Inquest, a lot of talk in those magazines. So the deck was sort of the first peek at competitive Magic that a lot of people saw. And that's really important, and it sort of started the practice in a roundabout way of looking online and in magazines and stuff for deck lists, copying them and taking them up to tournaments. So whether you love or hate net decking, it's the whole reason that I'm doing this today. So I am happy about it. Let me start the list for realsies here. And it's going to take a turn for the weird, because the deck I just talked about is one of the most influential decks in Magic history. This is not. I just had a ton of fun with it, and I had to put it on the list somewhere. Number 5 is Pickles. Best name for a deck ever, right? In 2006, if you wanted to have fun playing Magic, this was the deck. Not only because of the name, but because of the function. This is a really interesting lockdown combo that still sees some fringe play in Modern, even though it's not the best deck ever. But back in 06, this is a fairly good standard deck right here. It's just a lot of fun to play. Here's what you do. You play Vesuvan Shapeshifter and Brine Elemental. That's the main combo here. Basically what you do is you got a flip down Shapeshifter and a flipped up, you know, face up Brine Elemental on the field. You flip up Vesuvan Shapeshifter, and the wording here is very important. As it's flipped up, up, it becomes a copy of Brine Elemental, and it gets any, you know, when it's flipped up triggers. In this case, all their dudes are frozen. That's pretty good. And this means that you can do this every turn, choosing to flip down the Vesuvian Doppelganger during your upkeep, and then flip it up sometime later, and get, you know, that same thing happens again every single turn. They never get to untap for the rest of the game. The reason that this deck is really special to me is not only because it's a particularly SBMTG combo deck. This is right up our alley and sort of very, you know, something that influenced me a lot. But I love crazy combo decks, which you'll see on this list for the most part. There are some real decks on the list, don't worry, but there are also some decks that mean a lot to me, and they're almost exclusively combo decks. Pickles, I'll talk about that in a second. Pickles means a lot to me because this is the first deck that I made and played for a long time while I was part of what felt like a team. You know, there were 4 of us at the time, and we would lab, you know, really late into the night, not get like any sleep, and just play and play and play and build and build and build. And we went to PTQ events in Atlanta, you know, 3-4 times over the course of a year or so. And it was a really, really awesome time. You know, I evolved as a player in multiple ways. And I decided to build Pickles because that's, you know, that's so me, if you know me. It's so me. But going into a Pro Tour qualifier in Atlanta at the Gaming Pit in 2006, I want to say, yeah, it was late 2006. The whole team went up there, and we all played weird stuff. Like Jesse played red, and Jesse, he often played red, but that was weird, the deck he was playing. Sonny just built red-black good stuff, which like performed extremely well in testing, and went like 2-2 on the day, which was ridiculous. We all thought that deck was going to be amazing. But I built Pickles with slivers. There were slivers in Time Spiral block, and they were all really good considering telekinetic sliver can tap things down, making them, that's really good with the Brine Elemental combo. Basically, they don't get an untap step, and you tap all their guys down for them so that you don't have to worry about getting hit with like a big guy. This deck also played Hivestone to turn all of our creatures into slivers, and what was it, Virulent Sliver, I believe it was, the one that gives them poison counters as an alternate win condition. The deck actually sounds like incredibly stupid, but you know, I won the first 2 rounds that day with it, and then in round 3 I forgot to flip up the, flip back down the Vesuvian Shapeshifter during my upkeep, and I went to draw my card, and my opponent, you know, I immediately was like, oh crap, let me flip it on back down. And my opponent was like, no, you missed it, you can't do it, and he did the right thing. And he ended up being able to untap, and he ended up winning that game, and I just couldn't recover that day. I think I ended up going 2-2 and dropping. But the deck actually was, I promise you, really good. I just made a, you know, really dumb mistake in round 3. But Pickles never played slivers. That was just my dumbass. But so Pickles was just, you know, just the most fun deck to play in 06, and I've got stories surrounding it. I labbed this deck for like 2 months, and people laughed when I put slivers in it until it started winning. It's actually a decent deck, I promise you. But yeah, number 5. I had to put it somewhere on here. And doesn't it sound neat? Number 4, another slightly weird one and very, you know, subjective, very typical of me. But number 4 on my list is Human Reanimator. In 2012, there was actually a really good junk Reanimator deck that played, you know, Grizzly Salvage and Mulch to dump an Unburial Rites and an Angel of Serenity into the graveyard. And then on turn 4, you would flash back the Unburial Rites and get the Angel of Serenity, crushing them, you know, huge, you know, giant flyer, and you're able to basically exile 3 of their things. So, like, you win the game a lot off that. Plus, the deck played like Obsidian and a couple of other important threats. But, and even though that deck did really well, that just wasn't enough for an up-and-coming, soon-to-be Rookie of the Year player named Brad Nelson, who decided that he was going to couple the idea of aristocrats with the Reanimator principle. You know, you can use Grizzly Salvage and Mulch and stuff like that, and Unburial Rites. What he decided to do was an infinite combo. You know, I love those. Myself, I was just getting back into the game after a 1.5 year or so break from Magic, and this is the deck that really, like, made me, you know, it reminded me of why I love the game and, you know, why I love decks like this. Basically, the combo works in multiple parts. You put, with Mulch or Grizzly Salvage, or in this case, Faithless Looting, you put an Angel of Glory's Rise into your graveyard, and when it comes back into play, you return all of your humans from your graveyard to the battlefield. You can dump them into the graveyard using, you know, all the aforementioned dump stuff into your graveyard spells. And Cartel Aristocrat, you could sacrifice humans and then put them back into play once your Angel of Glory's Rise came into play. There was a neat trick in which you could basically, when Fiend Hunter came back into play by the Angel of Glory's Rise trigger, you could use a Fiend Hunter, put it on top of Angel of Glory's Rise. Then you could sack everything to Cartel Aristocrat, including the Fiend Hunter. Angel of Glory's Rise comes back into play, and you get all your humans back again. You can do this infinitely, just sacking things to Cartel Aristocrat, putting a Angel of Glory's Rise up under a Fiend Hunter, then sacking it to Cartel Aristocrat. Angel of Glory's Rise comes back, all of your humans come back. This led to crazy infinite combos. There was this ridiculous trick that they had to start wording cards differently, because Fiend Hunter has a trick where you can exile creatures forever if you put things on the stack correctly. So you can just exile their entire side of the board if you wanted to. There was, I forget the name of the creature, I'll have it right here, there's a picture of it. But you could gain infinite life off of that. Doom Traveler, you could have infinite, 1/1 flyers on your side of the board. So just an amazing, fun combo that could get infinite multiple things, so just awesome, amazing deck, and I had a lot of fun playing that. Got me back into Standard, and I probably wouldn't be here doing this if it weren't for this deck, to be honest with you. Just really rekindled my interest in the game. Number 3 is a real deck. Older players will definitely remember Black Summer. This is the Necropotence deck, and if you haven't ever read Necropotence, there's a lot of words on the card, but basically you can pay life to draw cards. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely dumb. Just 3 black mana, and that's a Dark Ritual. Back in those days, you could play Dark Ritual, get your Necro on turn 1, if that's what you wanted to do, and just start drawing cards. Card was ridiculous and really led to, I talked earlier about the deck, and how that led to sort of net decking in general, but this was the first deck that got all of the press, and the Duelist got the press in Inquest, got the press in every gaming publication and online all over the place. It came in 3rd place at the very first Pro Tour, and from there on it just led to this renaissance and this just dominance of the format for a whole year, really. They call it Black Summer, but this deck dominated the format for a long time. And a lot of people, this is sort of like Combo Winter when Urza's Block came out. A lot of people left the game, and a lot of people came into the game as a result of this, because this was getting some press in gaming circles, And Necropotence just played all of the best cards. Just look at these options. Not only Necropotence and Dark Ritual, but you also get Hymn to Torak, probably the best single discard thing ever, if you're willing to pay, if you have the option of paying the 2 black mana, in a heavy black deck. Order of the Ebon Hand, which is just one of my favorite black creatures of all time, and a bunch of other stuff. I got to play Hypnotic Spectre often on turn 1, and Hypnotic Spectre is an iconic creature, so just amazing cards. It was basically an aggro deck that just played incredibly fast and generated ridiculous amounts of initiative. It turns out that an aggro deck that can just draw cards at will is pretty good, and a lot of people figured that out fairly quickly. Number 2 is Fairies. Blue-black Fairies from Lorwyn specifically. Lorwyn is one of my favorite sets of all the times ever. I just love the sort of fairy tale aesthetic, and they nail it with the design and the flavor and the art direction. Just everything in Lorwyn clicked for me. Just a great set. A lot of really good ideas in it, really good mechanics and stuff. Love Changeling, bring that back. There was the tribal stuff, bring all that back. Really good. But getting ahead of myself. Just Lorwyn was really good, and this also birthed us Fairies, which is still a very important deck in Modern. This is just a great deck. I used to be a control player and sometimes an aggro player, and this just blends both of them perfectly. It's an aggro deck that plays like a control deck, and I've got a story based around this one, but I'll save that for just a second. Obviously, the key cards in this deck, if you've played Modern in the last forever, are Mistbind Click, Vendilion Click, Spell Stutter Sprite, and Bitter Blossom. We played Familiar's Ruse in the deck. That was just a really good card for all the the battlefield triggers that we're playing. Sometimes you could counter a spell with Familiar's Ruse, returning a Spell Stutter Sprite to your hand, and you'd have another counter spell locked and ready to go. So, just Fairies was an absolutely ridiculous deck that would just win very quickly. It played very like a tempo deck, just ideal tempo deck. Me and the team went up to PTQ in Atlanta, and I think it was at a convention center. It wasn't at a store. I don't remember exactly where it was. But in any case, this illustrates how great the format was. Andy, best player on our team. Andy was playing Toast, 5-color control deck, like Cruel Ultimatum and stuff, Cryptic Command, really good deck. Sonny was playing either Swans of Brynnar Gulf, that ridiculous thing, which I should probably also talk about, or he's playing Revelar combo, which was even better. Lorwyn was an amazing format, and I was playing Fairies. And we had labbed for this PTQ for a solid month, specifically in preparation for this event, evaluating the format, figure out what we want to do. And 2 nights before the event, this will be a lesson, by the way. 2 nights before the event, I thought, Momentary Blink would be really good in this Verry's deck. I should probably try and fit it in somewhere in the 75. And then I thought, no, it should be in the 60, you know, somewhere starting 60. So I worked in 2 copies of Momentary Blink and warped the mana base with only 2 days to test it out. And went up to the event and went 1 and 2 and dropped. And this is, I had a lot of experience playing fairies. I was very confident in my ability to play the deck, but just totally washed out because I wanted to add a card and try and break the format, you know, because I'm dumb. 2 nights before the event. I had no way of labbing it for long enough, you know. So that was, let that be a lesson to you. Don't ever add something like the night before a big event. It's not a great idea or anything. But that's a fun story that I wanted to tell. And that's one of the reasons I love fairies so much. You know, I have a story behind it. Stories are always good. And I just played the deck for like the whole block. And just loved it the whole time. I love aggro, I love control, and I love tempo. And it's everything mixed together perfectly. And number 1 is super weird. This top 5 is you're not going to see like hardly any of these decks unlike anybody else's top 5. Like I said, super subjective. Number 1 is an illustration of that. Number 1 is Yawgmoth's Bargain Combo. What? Right? This deck is from like 1999, late 98, early 99, something like that. And this is a deck that a lot of players will not have even heard of in the standard. Obviously, Yawgmoth's Bargain was an important card for a long time in Eternal formats, but in standard, it was also an important card, mostly because of this deck, which took a couple of different forms. But basically, I had just taught my cousin how to play Magic maybe a few months prior to this, and I've been playing Magic for a few years up to this point. And he ended up becoming better than me because he knew a guy down the street that was incredibly good at Magic. And I ended up meeting that guy, and he put this deck in my hands. And this is where my, I call it my first evolution. This is the first time I sort of leveled up in playing Magic, was with this deck. I just goldfished it incessantly, and playing it against itself, basically, playing against open air. I goldfished the deck incessantly and played it against, you know, Adam and William, the 2 guys, my cousin and his friend. Played it against them just at a just non-stop rate, and took it to every Sunday tournament over and over every single week for probably 3 months. You know, just obsessed with this deck and learning its ins and outs. And if you want to know what it is, which I've been prattling on about it long enough here, it is a combo deck that is sort of reminiscent of Storm. It tries to do everything all in one turn and win by going, you know, sort of like a long deck. We used to call, that could be on the list too, long.deck. Was a deck that did a lot of stuff all in one turn to basically hit a huge drain life for 20 and win the game. This deck sort of follows that same philosophy, but there's a lot of moving parts and they all work together, and you have to make it right. You have to do it perfectly. This is the first deck that made me feel like I was piloting it rather than just playing it. Let me see if I can sort of remember very quickly how you're supposed to do this, because there are a lot of moving parts. Stick with me. Basically, second turn, you're going to play a Dark Ritual and an Academy Rector. Put that into play. Third turn, you're going to untap and play a Phyrexian Tower. You're going to sacrifice the Academy Rector to the tower, get your 2 black mana, go through your library, and put a Yawgmoth's Bargain into play. At that point, you draw cards until you get another Dark Ritual and a Scourge Familiar. Hey, Ziggy. You play your Scourge Familiar, and then you start just basically go from there. You discard cards for mana, and you draw cards so that you can not only find things that you need, but fuel the mana that you can get out of Scourge Familiar. Basically, you're going to want to play, over the course of 1 turn, 4 copies of Soul Feast and deal 16 damage to them, or 16 life loss. You gain 16 life, and they'll all happen to do, you'll play a Soul Feast and you'll draw and discard, draw and discard. Play another Soul Feast, draw and discard. So each Soul Feast gives you the 4 life and lets you draw more cards, thus letting you discard more cards. Just everything works in unison. Now, you may have noticed that's only 16 life. How do you finish them off? You end up playing Yawgmoth's Will so that you can play cards out of your graveyard. You play that last Soul Feast out of your graveyard, and that's the 20 damage that you need to finish the game out. That was really, really complex, and you can go back and listen to it again, because there's a lot of stuff happening all at one time in this deck, and it's the first deck that really made me think while I was playing. Like, really, really think about my next move. You plan out moves 2 and 3 steps ahead with this deck, and that's one of the reasons I was obsessed with it. It just really introduced me to higher level Magic for really the first time as a player, and it just holds a place in my heart forever. And yeah, that's my number one. I don't know if that came out of left field for a lot of people, if they expected some more sort of classic decks on the list. And there were a couple, Necropotence, and the deck is on here. But these are just sort of more, decks that are close to my heart. And let you sort of, all of these decks sort of illustrate who I am as a Magic player and why you see some weird decks on the channel from time to time and what's influenced me as a deck builder and a brewer. So yeah, I hope that was a cool insight for you. I hope. That's all I got for now. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this because I had a lot of fun putting it together and thinking about like my favorite decks and all that. It was a really, really fun video to make. So I'm going to get to editing it right now. I hope you guys had fun with it. And what are we doing next time? Who knows? Suggest budget decks to me. I've got some things in the works, but I don't know if I want to wait for SOI to come out or just kick them on out, But I've got some things that sort of are in the pipeline. I'm still working on Red Blue Crush. That might come out next. People want to see Jund, but I think Jund will get amazing. If past Innistrad sets are any example, I think Jund will get amazing when SOI comes out. So I might wait on that. But let me know how you feel. I'm Deb from SBMTG. If you did enjoy the content, like, share, comment, subscribe, or if you just enjoyed the Ziggy, do all those things. And I will get your name. And I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.